Pursuing Gandhi's intuitions about violence and Western civilization has led me into an examination of how Gandhi wants us to think about our life with concepts and objects. The way we understand Gandhi and the philosophical concerns he directs us to provides a good indication, if you like, a good index of the way we are learning to reflect on experience while responding to a whole range of issues, including what is of concern to us here, that's politics. Let me just read out, because some of you may not be familiar with this one. When I said that he's contrasting religion with inquiry, religion that underlies all religion as inquiry to religion as identity, there is this very famous remark that echoes in direct way with a paragraph from the what's his name, the mayor, which you quote in Heathen, the mayor of Rome who made Oralism. So here is Gandhi's remark. Religions are different roads converging on to the same point. What does it matter that we take different roads, so long as we reach the same goal? Wherein is the cause for quarreling? And that is why he says religion underlying religion. He means it's inquiry. If you're inquiring, why do you need to take the same route? You have to take multiple routes. So that is his contrast. So let's therefore begin by asking whether the Gandhian consideration that I very briefly sketched above allows us to evolve a critique of left/liberal conception of politics. To see that politics itself in a deeper sense as experience occluding, and to argue that the only viable conception of politics is the one that conceives of it, as Gandhi did, as an activity that concerns itself with removing or resisting experience occluding structures and with creating structures hospitable to preserving the integrity of experience. Gandhi's Satyagraha, I want to argue, was an attempt to set up sites of ethical learning. It does not matter much whether we see this as anti-politics. I think there is an argument that says that this Gandhi was anti-politics, and one can understand why one says that. It does not matter much whether we see this as anti-politics or as an alternative conceptualization of politics. I hope to give some kind of a framework to these claims about Gandhi and experience of earthly structures by now focusing explicitly on politics. Although we familiarly talk about the left and the right, a moment's reflection will make clear that whatever difference those terms are meant to capture, they don't bear upon the conception of politics itself. The historical component of this proposition would involve showing how reform and representation, the two pedagogic projects of colonialism, structured Indian politics in such a way that it continues to reproduce the colonial framework long after the colonizers have departed. While it is out of the question to even briefly reconstruct the late 19th and early 20th century processes that set up these structures, I'll be touching upon the slightly more abstract or philosophical question of what these structures do to what I will term the transmission of cultural learning. For the moment, I want to focus on the conception of politics as the left conceives of it, because we're more familiar with it. There are several reasons why it would be important to have a characterization of left liberal politics. My concern is specifically to see if the Gandhian characterization of politics captures its essence, as it were. To begin with the present, then, I would like to argue that politics has consisted in placing items from the social in a peculiar zone, a zone that we might want to think of as normative zone. An example will make clear what I have in mind. As we know, for a long time in the 20th century, left politics, such as it was organized around an entity called the proletariat. The task of the Marxian social and political theory then became one of deciphering how this entity could be related to the collection in the empirical world called the workers, and to various other strata who could be placed in some sort of scale, first to the workers and then to the proletariat. One way of quickly getting a grip on the nature of left politics in India, but elsewhere too, is to plot the story of how the proletariat came to occupy the normative zone and how how many other entities have either simultaneously or successively occupied that zone, especially after the proletariat seems to have soundlessly vacated that place. These entities have been various kinds. In fact, not only agencies like proletariat, women, Dalit, and their corresponding properties, class, gender, caste, respectively, but also attitudes, policies, and objects, for example, secularism, toleration, reservation, human rights, and now perhaps the Constitution. I'm merely registering a superficial description of the process, of what needs to be probed, but what needs to be probed is not the items themselves so much as a zone. What is it about this zone that creates this magical or opaque relationship between the entities in it and, as it were, their empirical or factual counterpart? Some characteristics are readily noticeable. I mean, this we can discuss informally. The politics of fear or prohibition against any kind of a inquiry about items, or the logic behind placing them in the zone, the kind of a history that items require or call for, the insulation from experience, the peculiar and spectacular weddedness to concepts in the human sciences, whose task it is to ensure the, because weddedness, I mean that, even though the theories die, people hold on to the concepts. Unlike, in the natural sciences, where after, struggling to defend your theory, if the theory and the concepts are to be junked, people junk it. But here, think of the way people hold on to, say, class or gender. We will come back to some of these if we have the time, but quite clearly, if we have to speak of democracy differently, we can begin by removing it from that zone. In fact, here is, I think, what a general moral is. At a very abstract level, one can say that the politics has consisted in placing items in that zone, whereas the kind of a politics that I am thinking of, or inspired by Gandhi proposing here, is that we should think of removing those items from the normative zone. And that would be, one way in which we can begin to think of politics in an alternative way. Grace, time is also exhausted? Okay, wrap it up. Okay. So, what I really wanted to do in the larger sense, I'll need some more time, perhaps another 2 years, no, not another 20 minutes, is to show where this thing comes from, this zone and this conception of politics. Why, though we use the term politics, we really have no concept of it in that sense. That the question to be explored is why politics, or this domain that comes into being, in what way it prevents this transmission of what following Gandhi I call the ethical learning, and what are the other sides that prevent the transmission of this learning. So that's one question to be explored. But the second question is more explicitly about here. If this culture, in some sense, in a deeper sense, was organized around certain transmission of the reflection or experience or experiential knowledge, and then as Gandhi quite clearly realized, when he said that we are irreligious, he was meaning that this tradition is now being hollowed out, that its transmission is being stifled or distorted or driven underground in some deeper sense. So he was conceiving of, when I said that Gandhi conceived of politics as setting up sites of ethical learning, and you can understand his different examples that he used in real life. This is what he was trying to do. He was trying to set up alternative routes of transmitting that reflection on experience. So that's the rest of the paper. So the double movement supposed to come together, maybe in the next or somewhere down the years